Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you an impressive and chilling story. Let's meet Elowyn Harper, a respiratory therapist who was declared clinically dead exactly 7 minutes and 42 seconds after a horrific car accident. During this time, she was taken by a being of light to a spiritual realm and discovered the incredible power of human prayers, capable of shaping reality and even influencing medical diagnoses. What she saw on the other side will completely transform her view of faith and spirituality. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready for this intense and surprising journey. I was never exactly a fervent person. My faith was something shallow, almost a ritual of good manners. I grew up in a Christian family, but throughout my life, daily responsibilities and tiredness from work kept me from that deeper connection with the spiritual. As a respiratory therapist in Asheville, North Carolina, my focus was always on science, medicine, the here and now. My job was to help patients breathe better, but ironically, I was spiritually suffocating myself. On the morning of October 12, 2023, the alarm clock rang like any other Thursday. The sky was cloudy and the air felt heavy. My thoughts, as I drove to the hospital, were focused on little Samantha, a 6-year-old girl with severe asthma. She had huge, hopeful eyes, and there was something about her fragility that moved me. Maybe because, in a way, I also felt fragile, but in an invisible way. I was in the middle of a curve when it all happened. I remember seeing the truck coming towards me, a metal monster sliding across the wet asphalt. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, and there was no time to react. The impact was like falling off a cliff. The pain didn't come. Just a feeling of dislocation, as if my soul had been pulled out of my body. Suddenly, the chaos became silence. The world around me seemed distant, as if I were watching everything through a fogged window. I could see my own body trapped in the wreckage, blood running down my forehead. The paramedics arrived quickly, but I was no longer there. I was in another place, a space that I can't explain. It wasn't heaven, it wasn't hell. It was just nothing, a void full of peace. I felt myself floating, higher and higher, as the voices in the physical world became distant echoes. There, in that silent void, I knew I was dead, but what came next was more real than anything I had ever experienced. As my consciousness drifted away from the physical world, an indescribable feeling of lightness came over me. I wasn't falling or rising. It was more like being carried by a warm, gentle current of air. The gravity, the weight of worries, the fear of death, it all disappeared like a mist in the morning sun. I was just consciousness, a spark of life hovering between worlds. I found myself surrounded by a soft light, with no specific source. This light was not just visual, it had a texture, a feeling of welcome. Amidst this soft light, a presence formed. It was not a physical figure, but a manifestation of energy and intent. Even without words, I knew his name, Gabriel. He had no wings, no white robes, or any conventional features of an angel. Its appearance was more like a translucent silhouette, pulsing in shades of gold and pearl. Elowyn, her voice reverberated inside me, like an ancient melody. It was not a verbal communication, but a direct, almost telepathic understanding. You're not here by chance. There's something you need to learn. I couldn't formulate a response. There was no mouth, voice, or body. It was just my essence, and she was completely absorbed by the peace that presence brought. I knew I could trust that that being was not there to judge me, but to guide me. The surrounding landscape began to transform. The light gave way to a vast field of energy. I imagined myself within an ocean of lights, each beam vibrating at a different frequency. Gabriel led me through that surreal setting, where colors danced like waves. He showed me that each strand of light represented a prayer said somewhere in the world. Strong, faith-filled prayers were like intense rays of light, piercing the fabric of reality. Weak prayers, on the other hand, were soft and diffuse, disappearing before they even reached their destination. See, he said, showing how these beams interacted with the physical world. It was like watching the wind move the leaves of a tree, invisible but undeniably real. Prayers shaped reality, creating small ripples that rippled through the fabric of the universe. I was amazed, but at the same time, a sense of urgency was growing inside me. If prayers had so much power, what did that mean for the world I had left behind? Gabriel continued to lead me through that realm of pure consciousness. where the physical laws of our world did not apply. Each step, if it could be called a walk, took me deeper into a reality where thoughts shaped everything around me. I felt that there, time was not linear. Past, present, and future coexisted in a vibrant tapestry of light and energy. At a certain point, the environment around us began to shape itself into something I could understand better. What Gabriel called a cosmic control room was formed, but there were no walls or machines. It was a vast expanse where flows of energy intersected, each current carrying human intentions, hopes, fears, and, most importantly, prayers. In front of me, a sort of light screen materialized. In it, I began to see scenes from the physical world, as if I were watching a direct projection of reality. Gabriel pointed to an image that was forming, a mother kneeling next to her son's hospital bed in Brazil. She prayed in a low voice, her hands clutching her rosary so tightly her knuckles were white. His prayer was not just a whisper, it was an intense flow of golden light, which moved like a current, crossing dimensions until reaching its destination. I watched, fascinated, as this light touched the heart of a doctor in the next room. His synapses lit up, and he had a sudden insight, leading him to revise the boy's diagnosis. At that very moment, the child's immune system responded positively to the treatment, as if each cell had received an injection of faith and hope. And it didn't stop there. The golden light continued to spread, touching people around, mobilizing neighbors and friends to help that family in need. Elohim, each heartfelt prayer creates waves of possibilities, Gabriel explained. They can influence thoughts, strengthen bodies, and even change the course of social events. Prayer is more than a request. It is a tool for co-creation with the divine. I felt every word like a code being engraved into my soul. A profound realization dawned on me. We were not just living in a world created by God, but actively participating in that creation. Each true prayer was a brushstroke on the canvas of the universe, and each open heart a channel for divine light. As we continued in that cosmic control room, Gabriel revealed to me more secrets about the nature of prayer. He pointed to different streams of light crisscrossing the space, each carrying a distinct vibration. There were golden, blue, green, and purple rays, each color representing a specific intention. Banked prayers of gratitude, explained Gabriel, emanate a golden energy. They magnify the blessings already present in people's lives, creating a kind of magnetic field that attracts even more good things. I saw how these golden waves spread, touching homes, softening hardened hearts, and even revitalizing the plants and animals around them. It was as if nature itself responded to human gratitude. The healing prayers, meanwhile, had a green and blue hue, moving in smooth, wavy patterns. They seemed to penetrate physical bodies, interacting with cells and tissues, stimulating regeneration processes. I was able to see a scene where a group of people prayed for a hospitalized man. His aura, initially dull and lifeless, began to glow with those healing tones. Gradually, his health improved, as if the divine touch was operating directly on his body. Prayers for guidance were different. They appeared in purple streams, creating trajectories that opened before people, offering mental and emotional clarity. I witnessed a woman in deep crisis, not knowing which way to go. When she prayed for guidance, purple chains wrapped around her mind, and suddenly, her decisions began to make sense. It was as if the fog that obscured his vision of the future had been lifted. However, not all prayers had the same strength. Some, almost erased, barely left traces in the spiritual ether. Gabriel explained that these were weak prayers, made without faith or with selfish intentions. When someone prays only out of desperation without truly believing, or when he seeks only his own interests, the power of that prayer dissipates before achieving any real effect. The most powerful prayers were those made in genuine faith, aligned with divine will, and motivated by love. I saw how, when many people prayed together for the same purpose, their energies intertwined, forming an intense and unbeatable current. One example came to mind. In a region of conflict, collective prayers for peace began to alter the very brain chemistry of local leaders, making them more compassionate and less inclined to violence. The depth of this revelation was immense. I was witnessing the fabric of the universe being woven and unraveled by human prayers. It was as if each prayer was a thread of light that, when intertwined with others, created the spiritual carpet that supported the world. Gabriel then led me to an even more surprising place, what he called the prayer repository. It looked like an infinite library, but instead of books, each shelf was made up of pulsating spheres of light. Each of these spheres contained a prayer made at some point in history, from the anguished whispers of ancient people to the silent prayers of modern hearts. Walking through that ethereal space, I felt like I was inside a spiritual galaxy. Orbs of light floated around me, some shining brightly, others just flickering. Gabriel extended his hand, and one of these spheres came towards us. As I touched it, images began to form before me, as if I were watching a three-dimensional movie. It was the prayer of an elderly woman, kneeling beside her bed. I could feel his love and devotion, his simple but faith-filled words. I discovered that this woman was my great-grandmother, someone I had never met. She prayed for her family, including future generations she would never see. Protect my grandchildren, Lord. Guide them, even when I'm no longer here. Tears streamed down my spiritual face. Gabriel explained that prayers exist outside of linear time. My great-grandmother's request, made decades before my birth, had protected me at critical moments in my life. It was she, through her faith, who created a barrier of light around me when I was just a sick child, helping my recovery. It was your prayer that brought comfort to my heart on lonely nights, even without me knowing. Every true prayer remains alive, said Gabriel. They are like seeds planted in the soil of eternity. Some germinate immediately, others wait for the right moment to blossom. I understood then that prayers are not lost. They remain active, waiting for the opportunity to influence reality. And more than that, I realized that I, too, had been praying without knowing it. When I wished someone well, when I offered a word of comfort or even a simple positive thought, I was adding strands of light to that spiritual web. There, in the heart of the prayer repository, I felt a deep connection with all those who had prayed before me. I wasn't alone. No true prayer ever is. Suddenly, I felt a force pulling me back, as if a gigantic magnet was pulling me out of that spiritual realm. The light around me began to dissipate, and Gabriel's presence became more and more distant. He didn't say goodbye, but his last message echoed in my mind like a gentle melody. Teach them to pray. The feeling of falling was dizzying. It was like falling from an infinite height, but without the fear of falling. I was being pulled back into my body, into physical life. Little by little, the sounds of the world began to invade my consciousness. The insistent beeping of machines, muffled voices, the constant hum of the hospital. I opened my eyes with difficulty. The overhead fluorescent light seemed too bright, almost aggressive. I was surrounded by doctors and nurses, all frozen in shock. Dr. Nathaniel Graves, who I knew from working at the hospital, had an expression of complete astonishment. That's not possible, he muttered, his eyes fixed on the monitor that displayed my vitals. My hands were shaking slightly, and every movement seemed to require immense effort. My voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. I am alive? The medical team recovered from the initial shock and began carrying out a battery of tests. I was informed that I was clinically dead for exactly 7 minutes and 42 seconds. No medical explanation could justify my return. My heart simply started beating again, as if a divine spark had reignited my life. During the days that followed, as I recovered in the hospital, I could still feel a kind of spiritual resonance. It was as if my eyes had been reprogrammed to see the world in a different way. When someone entered the room, I would see a light mist around them, a subtle energy that changed color depending on their emotions. And, most impressively, I could still see people's prayers, soft threads of light that connected like invisible webs, weaving the destiny of us all. Dr. Graves, a man of science and avowed skeptic, began visiting me regularly. Initially, I thought he was just curious about my inexplicable recovery, but one silent afternoon, he finally asked, "Did you see anything during the time you were dead?" I knew at that moment that my mission had begun, not just returning to life, but sharing what I had learned. Prayer was not a simple request to heaven, but a powerful tool for shaping reality, and my first task was to show this to Dr. Graves himself, whose analytical mind needed something more than blind faith. He needed to see the invisible just as I had seen it. During my recovery, Gabriel's message constantly echoed in my mind, "Teach them to pray." At first, the idea seemed scary. Who was I to teach anyone about prayer? A woman who, Until then, only prayed in moments of despair, but I knew I couldn't ignore the call. What I had seen was too real, too powerful to keep to myself. My first attempts were timid. I started talking to co-workers, especially those who were in my hospital room during my miraculous return. Dr. Nathaniel Graves was the most skeptical, but also the most curious. In one of our conversations, he admitted, "I always believed only in what could be measured and proven, but what happened to you, it shook me. I knew it wasn't enough to talk about faith. I needed to show." I invited him to participate in a prayer session with me, but not conventional prayer. I explained that he needed to visualize his intentions as flows of energy, that each word should carry a clear and genuine purpose. To my surprise, he accepted. In that first session, just the two of us, we prayed for little Samantha, my asthmatic patient. We closed our eyes, and I guided Dr. Graves through a visualization. I imagined green and blue light surrounding the girl's body, her cells breathing new life, her lungs expanding with ease. I felt the flow of energy leaving us, and when I opened my eyes, I realized that the skeptical doctor was in tears. The effects were remarkable. Within days, Samantha began responding to treatment in ways that science could not explain. His recovery was quick, almost miraculous. Dr. Graves, still in disbelief, began to study the effects of faith on healing, delving into a personal journey of spiritual discovery. But I didn't stop there. I formed prayer groups at the hospital, inviting patients, families, and staff. At each meeting, I shared what I had learned during my near-death experience. He taught people to pray with intention, to visualize their prayers as dancing lights, to feel the real, tangible power that emanated from each sincere word. The results began to appear. Patients in critical condition showed unexpected improvements. Broken relationships found reconciliation. Lost people found guidance. Prayer was not just a spiritual tool, but a true transformative force, capable of shaping reality. I was living my mission. And the more I shared, the more I realized that each person who learned to pray with purpose became a new source of light, adding their own thread to the spiritual web that sustains the world. One of the most memorable moments of this journey was Samantha's transformation. From the beginning, she was more than just a patient to me. There was something in her big, hopeful eyes that touched my soul. When I came back to life after my near-death experience, I knew I needed to help her in some way, and that help came through the power of intentional prayer. Our prayer group meetings grew quickly. People of different faiths, and even those without religion, began to appear, attracted by reports of healings and positive changes. Prayer for Samantha became a central point. During each session, we visualized her small body being enveloped in green and blue light, imagining her airways opening, her lungs breathing easily. Dr. Nathaniel Graves, who had become an active participant in the group, frequently shared Samantha's medical results. He was perplexed. The exams showed a constant and inexplicable improvement. "She should be getting worse," he told me once, holding up the charts. "But it's like your body is reacting to something beyond conventional medicine." On a particularly emotional day, Samantha walked to our prayer group. His parents were by his side, their eyes teary with emotion. The little girl smiled and took a deep breath. Without any effort, "I don't need my inhaler anymore," she announced, her voice echoing in the small room. That simple sentence was testimony to a living miracle. Group participants began sharing their own stories. There were reports of family reconciliations, where brothers who hadn't spoken to each other for years became closer. People with critical diagnoses reported improvements that defied doctors. Even Dr. Graves himself began to pray silently during surgical procedures, believing that spiritual intention could aid his hands. I saw the ripple effect of the power of prayer. Each person who experienced a transformation became a new point of light in the world, spreading that energy to other people. Prayer, I learned, was contagious. When someone saw the real and tangible effects of faith, they could no longer pray in a superficial way. Samantha has become a symbol of this change. His presence at the meetings brought hope and reinforced the message that every sincere prayer was a potential miracle, just waiting for the opportunity to manifest itself in reality. With each new day, my life took on a completely different direction. Before the accident, my world revolved around hospital work, medical protocols, and daily routines. Now my focus was on practical spirituality, on helping others understand the real, tangible power of prayer. My purpose was not just to pray for them, but to teach them how to pray effectively, to truly connect with the divine. I began holding larger gatherings, not just at the hospital, but also at churches and community centers. I explained that prayer was not a list of requests, as if God were a wish granter. Instead, it was an opportunity to align our intentions with divine will, to become co-creators of reality. One of the exercises I introduced was light visualization. He asked everyone to close their eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine their prayers as beams of light. If someone prayed for healing, they should visualize this green and blue light surrounding the sick person, penetrating each cell with vital energy. If the prayer was for guidance, they imagined purple currents clarifying the path, dispelling the shadows of doubt. The results were impressive. There were reports of physical changes, such as improvements in health conditions, but also emotional and spiritual transformations. People who were trapped in cycles of fear and anxiety began to experience inner peace. Broken family relationships were restored. Some even said their prayers brought new job opportunities, unexpected help, and solutions to old problems. At each meeting, I felt Gabriel's presence. It was as if a soft, warm breeze ran through the room, touching each person there. I knew he was by my side, guiding every word, every teaching. He didn't need to appear physically. His presence was a silent, comforting certainty. In the midst of all this transformation, Dr. Nathaniel Graves became my greatest ally. He began recording the effects of prayers on patients, creating a kind of informal study on the impact of spirituality on physical and mental health. He said that although science could not yet measure faith, the results were undeniable. Together, we create a bridge between science and the spiritual, showing that, often, the invisible is as real as the visible. My life would never be the same again. I was no longer just a respiratory therapist. I was a messenger, someone who had glimpsed the other side and returned to share the truth. Prayer is a living force, capable of changing the world in ways we could never imagine. When I look back at the woman I was before the accident, I almost don't recognize her. Before, my prayers were timid whispers, hurried requests during desperate times. Now, every word I addressed to the divine carried a clear, almost palpable intention. I had learned during my near-death experience that prayer was not just a conversation with God, but an active participation in the creation of reality. One of the greatest lessons Gabriel taught me was about the concept of the web of light. Whenever someone prayed with genuine faith, a thread of light intertwined with those of others, forming a spiritual network that supported the world. It was as if each sincere prayer filled gaps in reality, strengthening the fabric of the universe. I could visualize this web during prayer sessions, each person contributing their own light, their own divine essence. People who attended the prayer groups also began reporting their own spiritual visions and sensations. Some said they felt warmth in their hands. Others saw flashes of light or heard soft whispers of comfort. A woman named Amelia shared that as she prayed for her husband's recovery, she felt like her words were blowing like leaves in the wind, reaching the man's heart even as he lay unconscious in the hospital. Shortly afterwards, he woke up, surprising doctors with his recovery. Dr. Nathaniel Graves, who initially sought a scientific explanation for these phenomena, ended up becoming a man of faith. His transformation was gradual but profound. He went from a staunch skeptic to someone who prayed before every surgery, asking for divine guidance. "I still believe in science," he told me one day, "but now I understand that there is something beyond what instruments can measure, and perhaps prayer is what fills that gap." My house became a meeting point for those who were looking for more than answers, but real experiences with the spiritual. We organized prayer vigils, where people of different faiths and backgrounds came together in a single purpose. And as this community grew, I felt more and more a responsibility to continue sharing what I learned. I knew my mission was not just to teach about prayer, but also to live what I preached. And the more I did this, the more the light around me intensified, not just in a spiritual sense, but also in the little things of everyday life. Life, for me, had become a constant prayer, an infinite conversation with the divine, where every thought, every act of kindness, and every word spoken with love contributed to the creation of a better world. Today, my life is a living testimony of what it means to pray with purpose. Since my return, I have never physically seen Gabriel again, but I feel his presence in every prayer session, in every silent miracle, and in every transformed heart. My purpose is clear: to teach people that prayer is not just a ritual but a real force, capable of shaping reality and bringing light where there is darkness. Prayer groups grew so much that we needed to meet in larger spaces. What started as small gatherings at the hospital and in my living room evolved into community gatherings where hundreds of people came together to pray, and it didn't matter the religion or personal belief. Everyone was welcome. The important thing was the sincere intention, the true desire to bring light to the world. Stories of transformation multiplied. People who previously lived in emotional darkness found peace. Fractured families were restored. Even Dr. Nathaniel Graves, who had become a constant partner on this journey, was surprised by the depth of the changes. He wrote an article about the impact of spirituality on patient recovery, opening an important conversation between traditional medicine and the power of faith. As for me, I continue to learn every day. I learned that prayer doesn't need elaborate words or complex rituals. Often the most powerful prayer is just a sigh of gratitude or a silent thought of love. I also learned that when we pray, we connect not only with the divine but with all other human beings, creating an invisible current that runs through the world. My greatest joy is seeing other people discover this power. When a mother holds her healed child in her arms, when a young man finds purpose in the midst of chaos, or when someone feels the presence of God for the first time, I know my mission is being accomplished. And so, I continue my journey. I continue to teach, pray, and live each moment as an opportunity to add another thread of light to the spiritual web that sustains the world. Because at the end of the day, every sincere prayer is not just a request, but an answer, a response to the call of divine love, which invites us to be co-creators of a brighter, more just and more hope-filled reality. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.